All right, love it or leave it. Protagonists meet in the first 10% of the story.
I love it. I think I could go either way on it, but I do enjoy it. When they've met, they're, hitting the ground running. I feel like, yeah, that feels pretty good.
All right, love it or leave it. Dual point of view narration.
Love it. I love mutual pining. Like that's something that I love being able to see. That I think is a place where the psychology definitely comes out because I want to get in their heads. I want to experience the sort of angst and the tension and all that stuff. So yeah, that I love.
All right, all for the mutual pining. Love it or leave it. Third person past tense.
I love it. I don't mind first person POVs. I think it depends on what's right for the story. I also read contemporary and other genres, so I know that it's not always in third person. But yeah, I do love it. I think I prefer writing in third as a writer too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Love it or leave it. Third act breakup or dark moment.
Love reading them depending on, how it's done. I can leave writing them sometimes because I feel like for me, I like to load up on the angst so much that it feels stressful for me as a writer to feel like I'm going to really balance it out with something very optimistic to reach that HEA at the end. And so I can sort of get myself into a corner where I feel like, okay, I've made this so hard. And now I need to make sure that I deliver something that is like equally emotional and optimistic in a way that sort of balances things out and doesn't feel rushed. And so that can definitely be challenging on the writer side. But I do like reading them.
So it's not so much that you don't like writing the breakup part of it. It's the reunion happily ever after that stresses you
Yes,
out.
yes, that's exactly it. It's like for me, yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head there because I've said this too, where I'm like, I feel like the love confession that comes at the end, like the final sort of like, okay, we are in it. That is hard for me to do, which I know is maybe a little nuts as a romance writer and reader. But yeah, it's like, it's the actual like, I have to make this like sincere and believable, optimistic. That's the part that's hard to keep fresh because it feels like, eventually everybody's kind of getting to that point anyway. The rest of it, yeah, I think that I don't find that as difficult. It's the end of sort of like, all right, I got to give you the thing that you're wanting in a way that feels fresh and believable and optimistic. And that's a lot.
And in fewer than 10,000 words.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I relate to that. I think for the last few books, every time I get halfway through, I'm like, I have convinced myself why they shouldn't be together.
Yeah, exactly. Like, because that's the other thing too, is like you want to create enough obstacles, right? The whole premise question is like, why can't they be together now? And so then we do that. And then it's like, well, how do I convince you that all of that is
Doesn't matter.
done? It's done now. Yeah, exactly. They've sorted everything out that they need to.
Yeah. All right. Love it or leave it. Always end with an epilogue.
I do love these. I know not all stories need them. So I think, whatever's right for the story. I read them when an author has written them. I know some people don't, which is definitely wild to me. I'm like, if there's however much story you give me is how much I'm going to read. And I'm a person that'll go and look up those bonus scenes and like get the newsletter, whatever. So I like to just get the full picture. I do like them. Yeah.
It is interesting. I've heard that there are readers who don't read prologues or epilogues. I guess there's some concept that they are optional. I don't
Yeah.
consider when I'm writing them, I do not consider them to be optional story wise. Like I assume that you know
Oh.
what I've told you in the prologue and I could make something happen in the epilogue. It's romance, so I'm not going to like kill someone, but I could. And
Yeah, you
you
never
as the
know.
reader, like you should be reading the entire book.
You should be reading the entire book. And there's some authors like I've talked about how I love Lorraine Heath's books, and the epilogues that she does are like part of her brand. Like to me, I know those epilogues are going to wreck me in some way. And she does some amazing things where she moves like far into the future or, whatever it might be. There's something there that's like, yeah, the writer put it in with intention, so I'm going to read it.
Yeah. All right. And love it or leave it, share research in an author's note.
Love it. As we've talked about, I'm an academic by day. So my readers are going to get one whether they want it or not. The real question is how long is that author's note going to be? And
And
are they going to read it?
now the author's note I do think is optional, but I agree. I have found it hard to get them short enough. And so then I have moved most of my research into a different place. But yeah, the author's note is a great place to continue learning about the story world.
Yes. And just a little plug for The Deed with the Duke. I have one there as well. And it is sort of a letter to the reader almost, I think for me, like where I'm talking about, the plans for the future books and also a little bit about why I wanted to write this story and in this genre. And we've had conversations about, I think, there's been a lot of sort of internal doubt for myself to sort of enter into a genre as somebody that, is underrepresented in the genre and writing about characters that aren't always represented. And so the author's note for me is a way to just kind of say hi and hello and like, I'm going to be doing this and I hope you'll want to join, for as long as I'm doing this. And so to me, that's like one of the ways of kind of getting to know the reader a little bit more. Like it feels a little bit more of a personal touch than the story, obviously, is my way of introducing myself to the reader, but it's different, right? It's a way of kind
Mhm.
of breaking down a little bit of that fourth wall or whatever you want to call it between the reader and the writer. So I appreciate those because sometimes that's what other writers are doing as well, right? Other authors are trying to showcase something that they've worked on or just some of their like motivation. Yeah, I know Courtney Milan does a lot of those too, and I love reading those as well. So I do enjoy those.
Yeah. All right. And are there any romance rules I didn't ask about that you like to break or at least push boundaries with?
I'm sure there are. I can't think of something like off the top of my head. Obviously I'm going to adhere to the eventual happily ever after, happy for now. But like I said, I'm more of a discovery writer, so I kind of put them into situations and away we go. And I'm sure there are things that'll come up that I'll say, oh, I don't really know if I want to do this. I think even with beats and things like that are expected, I think it really depends on the tropes or the plot that you're going for. So I think there's times where I'm learning at least to be a little bit more flexible with allowing the story or the characters to eventually take over. And even if I have all these notes about how I thought it was going to go, I'm going to try to listen to whatever that momentum is saying in the moment.
Yeah, I like that.